Grace and peace to you from God our Father and from our Lord and Savior, Jesus the Christ. We're in deep. I've been thinking a lot about the water and how the water is a symbol of obviously baptism, but also just deep depth, just the depth that being part of Jesus and following Jesus brings to us. And I don't know about you, I'll just speak for me, but being around water is like one of those holy, sacred places for me in my life. I love to go sit by the water, ocean, lake, river, stream, creek, I don't care. But sitting by the water, it restores your soul. It's sort of like Psalm 23 that says, my shepherd leads me beside still waters, and he restores my soul. Anybody else feel that way? You love to go sit by the lake or sit by the beach. Well, it's one of those places where I feel close to God, and I feel like God's with me, and sort of my heart rate slows, and I feel like I can be in God's presence a little bit. Well, I want to remind you that this story that we're hearing from Luke chapter 5 isn't a parable. One of Jesus' parables are the made-up stories that are truth-bearing but aren't historically verifiable. This is a true story. This is a thing that actually happened, and it's corroborated. It's written in all the Gospels. And one of the things that I think is really cool about this story, because I nerd out on this, is that we actually found a boat in the lake of Gennesaret that dates back to the first century. We found it in the deepest part. And this is that boat. In 1986, archaeologists found a boat and they carbon dated it back into the first century. So there's a chance that this boat was on the lake that day, that Jesus was there. That gives me chills just to think about it. And when you look at the boat, not a great boat. What do you think? I'm not sure that I would get in that boat. I'm not sure that it's seaworthy, as they would say. And then when you think about Peter, James, and John, 3 dudes in that boat. And then you think about all the fish they catch, also in that boat. That story about how they began to sink starts to feel a little too real, don't you think? And so one of the things I want to remind you of is that the historical fact that there were fishermen on this lake means that they were doing a dangerous job. Being a fisherman's a pretty dangerous job. First of all, it's a night job. If you've ever been fishing before, you know that the best time to fish is right before sunrise, right? And so they would go out at midnight or 1 or 2 a.m. It's pitch black on the water. And they would go out and they would fish in the dark. And if you know anything about fishing, you know that you have to be quiet too, right? And so you try not to scare away fish. Well, the sea, it's a lake, but it's a very big lake, is a dangerous place. And they know that they have a dangerous profession. And so they become really superstitious. And they've agreed that the middle of the lake, the deep, is haunted. Why? Because a lot of people have died here in this lake. And then when you get to the center of the lake, that's like the dumbest place you can possibly be, because if you've ever been fishing, you know that you troll the shoreline. You stay close to the shore. When you watch Finding Nemo, right, like as soon as they get out into the vast ocean, it feels like a desert. There's not a lot of fish there. There's not a lot going on. And so they were out all night, and they resist going to the middle, and they stay around the outside, and they caught nothing. But at the end of the night, they have to come back to shore when the sun comes up, and they still have to clean their nets. Because even when you don't catch fish, you catch tin cans and boots and logs and other trash. You catch part of other boats. You catch all these kinds of things. And I just imagine them, don't you, on the shoreline, doing this really tedious, really scummy, gross work. And I'm just imagining, because, we're people and we know what people are like, that these sailors are probably competitive. What do you think? You think the fishermen are sitting there doing this, right? Do you think that they walk around the shoreline and look at all of the other boats and see who caught the most? And do you think maybe they might razz the people who caught the least? Yeah. I would think that returning to shore completely empty-handed was just a recipe for bullying. I would think that you would show up and you would know you lost all the money, you lost all your time, you didn't catch anything, you've got no income coming in, I would think that you were also made fun of and ostracized by the other people around. I would think that then you had to bring that shame home to your family and tell them that you caught nothing that day and maybe we go hungry today. I would think that cleaning these nets after being up all night and having caught nothing is a pretty bad moment. And yet it's the moment that Jesus finds them. Jesus says, hey, I know you're tired, but let me borrow your boat so I can talk to these people and tell them about a good life. Tell them about an eternity life. Tell them about God. Tell them about the promises that have been made for them in their lives. And so they do it, and you can just imagine them nodding off like a couple of you are right now. You can just imagine them, right? They've been up all night. And then he's like, okay, guys, here's what we're going to do. We're going to go into the deep. We're going to go into the scariest part of the lake, and we're going to fish there. And they really try and talk about it. The Gospel of Luke in English really waters down how much they really, really don't want to go to the deep. They're like, Master, and then like, if you say so, we will. But all of those guys who are making fun of them on the shore, you can bet are making double fun of them for going to the middle of the lake where there are no fish. And they throw out their nets. And they catch so many fish. And there are so many ways that we can process this story, right? Well, there just happened to be a school of fish happening right then, right? This feels like a miracle, but it's just dumb luck or chance or something, right? We can always look at a miracle of abundance and think to ourselves, man, that was really lucky. That was happenstance. That was something like this. And the part that I just kind of can't wrap my mind around is that after they make this catch of a lifetime, they leave it all behind. After the lowest of lows, they get to the highest of highs, and it's like a walk-off home run. And they just leave, and they follow Jesus. I actually think this is a really good metaphor here because life is how you handle your abundance. Life and your following of Jesus is how you frame your life in abundance. Because if you've been given an awful lot, you have to decide how all of these good things came to be. And the truth of this story is that even though it's a walk-off home run, it's T-ball and Jesus teed it up for you, right? So even in your abundance, you are no self-made man, right? They leave it all behind to follow Jesus. And we look at that and we go, wow, what amazing discipleship that is. Well, one theologian talks about discipleship in 5 stages, and I really hope you can hang with me because I think this is an important part of how we live out our faith journey. He says the first one's just the community. It's, people watching a worship service or people who just live in the town of Cary, North Carolina, or people who just found us online because, they were trying to find a cooler church and then they accidentally typed in the wrong thing and they found us on YouTube. And, the first one is just community, people who aren't connected to anything. They have no discipleship. These are just kind of the people milling around in Jesus' world, right, by the lake. And then they catch something that Jesus is saying, and they stand in the crowd on the shore, and they hear his words, and they're like, hey, I'm tired of walking anyway. I'll just sit here and listen for a little bit. And then the next layer of discipleship is that when the crowd becomes more regular, they start to attend more of what Jesus says. They start reading their Bible, or they start coming to worship more, and they say, wow, I want to be a part of this. I want to get something out of it, sure, but I also want to put into it. And then the next layer up is that you want to mature in your growth. And this is where I think a lot of you are. This is why I think that you're here today. This is why I think you continue to come back to churches, because you want to mature. You want to know Jesus more and have that be a bigger part of your life. You want to be more committed to it because this is absolutely the good life. And then finally, this theologian says the final stage of discipleship is to become a minister in your own way. You don't have to be like us. You could be your own way. You can be your own minister, but as you continue to see the abundance in your life and you name it as Jesus, you name it as what God's given you. You find yourself on this path. And I have to tell you, I am absolutely committed to helping you on your journey in discipleship. I am absolutely convinced that what Jesus Christ offers us is a better life than any other life out there. And I don't know about you, but there have been times in my life when I felt like I hit that home run, right? Where I felt like I climbed to the top of the mountain, where I felt like my boat was completely full of fish. And I thought when I got there, I would finally feel happy. I thought when I got there, I would finally feel like I'd arrived. I thought when I got there, I would finally feel like I had it all. And then you get there and it feels like a 7 out of 10. Anybody else ever felt that top of the mountain and realized that you were climbing the wrong mountain? All our life is framing the miracle of abundance. All of our lives is framing our miracle of abundance. And because the way we respond to this abundance says so much about us and where we are in our discipleship journey, because like Peter, we can look at the abundance and say, oh my gosh, I am not worthy of this. I want to follow you. But that's not the dominant narrative in our culture. I would say the dominant narrative to this is, look at all of these fish that I caught. And these are my fish. And they're going to stay my fish. And I'm not going to share them with you because you didn't go out fishing. I worked hard for my fish, and you don't get any. And if you're going to get them, I'm going to price them, market competitively, to make sure that I get mine. And I would rather my fish rot than give them to you. You might think I'm being a bit harsh here. But actually, I was talking to my buddy Nathan out in California. And he was the Justin before Justin. And I said, hey, what's new? And he said, hey, California just passed this really cool law that says grocery stores can't throw out food anymore. They have to donate it before it goes bad. And I'm like, that's not already a law? How low is that? I mean, if you're looking at the road to discipleship, how low-hanging fruit is not throwing food away when there are people going hungry? How is that? How is that something to be celebrated? There is no such law in North Carolina, of course. So one of the things that I find when I follow Jesus is a consistent effort to look at the state of the world and say, we can do better, because that is not very good. That is not very good if all we've decided is that we're going to make a law that says we can't throw food out before people go hungry. I just think that there's a lot more discipleship that could be picked up. I think there's a lot more that I'm sorry to be yelling at you. I think there's a lot more that could be done. Because I think we spend a lot of time being shallow. We spend a lot of time on the shoreline. And what Jesus wants for us is to go deep. Jesus calls us out there to do something deep with our lives. Hey, Justin, can you play under me a little bit? Hey, can you turn him on? We've been saying we were going to do this for like 6 months. Let's try it today. Jesus calls us to go deep. And I don't know where you are on your discipleship journey. I am here to tell you unequivocally that following Jesus of Nazareth is the good life. It is the best version of you. It's not searching to have the most fish. It's the life that's better than all the fish. It's the life where other people have fish. Because think about the abundance that they have. Think about how this miracle is. They have all the fish they can eat. You know what we call that? Tuesday. Right? Their biggest miracle is a regular day in our life. That they have enough food to eat is our starting point. And so we can always frame our abundance by saying, I earned it. We can frame our abundance by saying, I'm not worthy. We can frame our abundance by saying, well, we got enough food for today, but let's not celebrate because we're still going to need food tomorrow. We can frame our abundance by saying, I worked for this and they didn't, so I'm going to throw it away so that they can't have it. We can frame our abundance any way that we can, but I got to tell you, being a follower of Jesus is not only the good life, it is countercultural. And the more we realize that, the more we can actually follow Jesus to the deep parts of our lives, of our souls. I told you that sitting beside the water is just a really peaceful place for me, and this is my spot. And when I lived in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, 40 minutes north is Hanging Rock State Park. And when I had a really difficult decision to make, or I had a really difficult conversation I was about to have, or I was just having a really bad day, I'd schedule some time and I would drive up 52, and I'd go to Hanging Rock State Park, and there was a rock that I sat on, and this was my rock. This is where I sat. And I looked out over the water, and I just felt God's presence calling me deeper, calling me into something more. And 5 years ago, almost to the day, I was sitting on this rock thinking about moving to Cary. 5 minutes ago, almost to the day, I was sitting right here, took this picture, and thinking about joining you all. And I thought, I don't want to move. I just finished learning everybody's name at the church that I'm at. Why would I go somewhere else? Why would I move my kids? That sounds scary and dangerous. And what if I don't like it? What if this guy Wolfgang's not what he says he is, right? I mean, there's so much uncertainty in that. And I remember praying a prayer, and I just said, thy will be done. Thy will be done. And I had this breath come into my lungs, and I thought, holy crap, I really mean that. And I'm surprised sometimes how shallow or deep my journey is. But I was like, wow, I actually really mean thy will be done. Wow. You know, my prayer for all of us is that when the deep calls you, that you get in the boat. And that wherever God's calling you in the discipleship journey, wherever you are today, that there is depth to be found. And my prayer for you is that in that depth you find Jesus and you find yourself. May your soul continue to be blessed by following Jesus. And may you realize that your abundance is only because Jesus gave it all for you. Amen.